You are standing in your living room. The floor feels solid beneath your feet. Your coffee mug sits on the table. Everything is normal. And then, in an instant, gravity doubles. The force pulling you toward the center of the Earth goes from 1G to 2G. What happens in the next second? The next minute? The next week? The answer is one of the most brutally physical thought experiments in science, and it reveals just how precisely calibrated our bodies and our entire world are to the exact gravitational pull we have right now. The very first thing you would feel is weight. Your own weight suddenly doubled. If you weigh 160 pounds, you now feel like 320. Your knees buckle. Standing upright becomes an athletic feat. Walking feels like carrying another full-grown adult on your shoulders at all times. But that is just the beginning. Your heart, which is a muscle that has spent your entire life pumping blood against 1G of gravity, is suddenly working against twice the resistance to push blood up to your brain. It was not designed for this. Blood pressure in your lowered extremities would spike dangerously while blood flow to your brain drops. Within seconds, you would feel dizzy. Within minutes, many people would lose consciousness as their hearts simply cannot generate enough pressure to keep their brains supplied with oxygenated blood. People with existing heart conditions would likely suffer cardiac events almost immediately. Fighter pilots experience 2G regularly during maneuvers, but they wear special pressure suits that compress their lower bodies to force blood upward, and they are young, fit, and trained. An average person at 2G without a pressure suit is in serious medical danger within minutes. Now look around your home. Every object that was engineered for 1G is now failing. Shelves designed to hold a certain weight suddenly hold double. Cheap bookshelves collapse. Pictures fall off walls as their mounting hardware fails. The table your coffee mug was sitting on might hold, but the mug slid off because the friction that held it in place was calibrated for 1G of normal force, and the doubling changed the dynamics of every surface interaction. Your refrigerator might tip. Tall furniture topples. Anything with a high center of gravity becomes unstable. Outside, the consequences escalate immediately. Trees, especially tall ones with heavy canopies, would crack and fall. A large oak tree might weigh 20,000 pounds. At 2G, it effectively weighs 40,000, and its root system and trunk were evolved for the original load. Forests would sound like a war zone as trees snap and crash to the ground. Birds would struggle enormously. Flight requires generating enough lift to overcome gravity, and at 2G, every bird in the sky would need to produce twice the lift. Most small birds could not sustain flight and would be forced to land. Larger birds with slower wing beats would simply fall. Aircraft, however, would actually be okay initially since their engines generate far more thrust than needed for level flight at 1G. But landing approaches would need to be completely recalculated since aircraft would descend much faster. Bridges would be under extreme stress. The George Washington Bridge in New York supports itself plus traffic at 1G. Double the gravity, and the dead load of the bridge itself doubles. Many older bridges would develop structural cracks within hours. Some would collapse within days. Every skyscraper, every dam, every overpass was engineered with specific safety margins above 1G of gravitational load. Doubling gravity would instantly consume most of those margins and exceed them in many cases. The water cycle would be dramatically affected. Rain would fall twice as fast, hitting the ground with twice the kinetic energy. Erosion would accelerate dramatically. Rivers would flow faster and more turbulently, carving deeper channels and flooding more frequently. Waterfalls would be more powerful and more dangerous. Ocean waves would behave differently, since the restoring force of gravity that creates waves would be doubled, changing wave dynamics in complex ways. The atmosphere itself would compress. Atmospheric pressure at sea level would roughly double as the weight of the air column above you doubles. This would increase the partial pressure of oxygen, which might sound beneficial, but would actually be toxic over time. Oxygen toxicity at sustained elevated partial pressures causes lung damage, seizures, and eventually death. The air that you need to survive would slowly poison you. Geologically, the increased gravitational compression on the Earth's crust would trigger earthquakes worldwide as tectonic plates adjusted to the new stress regime. Volcanic activity would likely increase as the pressure dynamics in magma chambers changed. The planet itself would slightly compress, becoming marginally smaller in diameter as the stronger gravity squeezed everything inward. Perhaps most importantly, the human body would begin to deteriorate in ways that mirror accelerated aging. Your spine would compress, making you shorter. Your joints would wear out faster under the doubled load. Your bones, while strong, are optimized for 1G, and the constant doubled stress would cause microfractures and accelerated osteoarthritis. Over months, your heart muscle would thicken as it worked harder, a condition called left ventricular hypertrophy, which eventually leads to heart failure. Humans might adapt over many generations, becoming shorter, stockier, with denser bones and more powerful hearts, essentially evolving toward a body plan resembling a smaller, more compact version of our current form. But that would take thousands of years of natural selection. In the short term, doubled gravity would be a medical and engineering catastrophe. Gravity is not just a background force we take for granted. It is the invisible architect of everything. Our bodies, our buildings, our entire civilization is calibrated to 9.8 meters per second squared with extraordinary precision. Change that number by even a small amount, and the world as we know it begins to crack, buckle, and fail. We are perfectly adapted to exactly this much gravity, no more, no less. If you want to keep stress testing reality with me, subscribe. We have